Hello, welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Let me tell you, this is a super exciting time to be an Age of Sigmar fan because Games Workshop have just released 8 new Regiments of Renown that you are going to be able to play in Age of Sigmar or with your Age of Sigmar armies. Let's quickly talk about what a Regiment of Renown is before we look at what's in the Regiment of Renown. And also, I'm going to keep my opinions on this release to a separate video, which will follow along from this video, because I've got lots of thoughts about this release, but that'll be in a separate video, so keep your eyes out for that. And also, in this video, let me know in the comments below which of the Regiments of Renown you like, which one you're going to run. Okay, Regiment of Renown is a select group of models, which it says on the regiment what you can take, and then that collection of models is a certain amount of points. Those Regiments of Renown don't have access, so if I'm running Cities of Sigmar and I get a Regiment of Renown from another army into my army, none of my allegiance abilities are going to work on that unit. Most of the keyword stuff isn't going to be connected to it. It operates as a fully independent piece. So obviously everything is kind of keyword locked. So normally a Cities of Sigmar ability will work on a Cities of Sigmar unit. That won't work on your Regiment of Renown. Regiment of Renowns as well have their own abilities that they bring with them. They do not bring the allegiance abilities of their, the army or the book that they come from, and instead they'll just come in as they are with their abilities on their war scrolls, their stats on their war scrolls, and also some other abilities for the Regiment of Renown. So that's a Regiment of Renown, and you buy them as a single kind of collection. Also, your army list can only ever include one Regiment of Renown. So I like Regiments of Renown. I'm actually on record as saying that I think armies of renown or Regiments of Renown are an incredibly exciting way to galvanize the game, creativity, and create some incredible opportunities for storytelling, which some of these Regiments of Renown we're about to talk about absolutely will do. But I've also said that Games Workshop hasn't necessarily nailed it in that regard, which I'll talk about in another video. Anyway, these are a great opportunity to get some cool new models and add them into your army. And what's crazy is you're now going to be able to run cross-alliance. So in Age of Sigmar, there are 4 grand alliances: Death, Destruction, Order, and Chaos. And normally, Regiments of Renown only operate inside their own. But you are going to be able to run some regiments, so some models from what is considered to be not your alliance in your alliance. So there's lots to say about that as well. But we'll cover that in another video. All of this information can be found for free on warhammercommunity.com. And they bring up all this information here. And there are 8 Regiments of Renown that we are going to go through. Each Regiment of Renown, as you can see from this image, has a certain amount of points. And all of these Regiments of Renown are generally cheaper than if you were to get those units individually. So if you were to get those units individually, so for instance, with the Enforcers of the Tithe, it contains a Mortis and Os Effector, Mortek Guard, and a Gothazar Harvester. Normally that costs like 540 points. This will cost 510 points. So technically it's cheaper, which is kind of interesting as well. Another thing to say, which I'm going to talk about a lot in the op-ed video, is you cannot just buy boxes of these. There isn't a box which contains the Mimrodon, the Thaumaturge, and the Ogroid Therodons as a single purchase box. And so these are just a random collection of models that you're hoping your local hobby store has got all 2, 3, 4 of whatever these models are in your collection. Obviously, though, and this is really important, gives you an incredible opportunity to kit bash. It gives you a great opportunity to build something like one of the Regiments of Renown is going to be a Loon Boss and a Dankhold Troggoth. Great opportunity to, stick some mushrooms on a dude, maybe 3D print a bigger dude for your army. So like a hulking beast for like Deepkin. It doesn't have to be a Dankhold Troggoth. Instead, it could be like a giant squid or something. So great opportunity for some hobby here as well. So there are a load of positives. There's also, I think, some negatives. Anyway, let's go look at the first of the Regiments of Renown. Okay, so the first of the Regiments of Renown that we're going to look at is an OCR Bone Reapers one. This contains a Mortis and Os Effector, who is a level 1 wizard, 2 units of 10 Mortek Guard, which are 2 attack infantry. Each model in that unit has got a health. They got 4-up save. If they don't move, it's unrendable. So they get no positives or negatives to their save, 4-up. And also a Gothazar Harvester, who has got the ability to generate Bone Tithe points and return Mortek Guard models to the Mortek Guard units. So kind of interesting. Again, this isn't sold as a box. This can be included in a Cities of Sigmar army, A Daughters of Cain army, Flesh Eater Courts, Fire Slayers, Gloomspite Gits, Carriage Gravelords, Cruel Boys, Ogre Moor Tribes, Skaven, Sons of Behemoth, and Soulblight Gravelords. The narrative is that, unlike most undead, the Osiarchs are willing to compromise, provided their tithe is not waylaid. Though they bear little trust of the forces of chaos, a desperate or cunning general may be able to direct them towards a mutual foe. After all, the Bone Reapers will happily harvest the corpses on both sides. So the idea is they just turn up, Age of Sigmar lads see some bone men outside, and they're like, we're off to fight some particularly bony enemies. Do you want to come with us and you can collect the tithe and not take our bones? That's the concept, I think, for this army, and off they go. So what special rules do these units have? So the first one is collect the tithe, which is done in the combat phase, and it's done in any combat phase. You pick a Gothizzar Harvest in this Regiment of Renown to use this ability, then pick a non-hero infantry unit, friendly or enemy, to be the target. A point about this is in no way does this give it a range. So you can pick anywhere on the board right now. So that does need FAQing, unless they intend it to be anywhere on the board. Probably no one runs this anyway, but whatever. Right, the effect is you roll dice. If the roll equals to or exceeds the target's health characteristic, one model in the target unit is slain, then give this the unit using this ability 1 bone tithe point. So that's pretty cool. It's non-hero infantry, so you can't just pick the best infantry out there, but it does mean, like, you know, there's the potential. I think Storm Fiends are like 6 health each, so potential to get one of them, a Kurnoth Hunter, roll a dice, and this is in any combat phase, which, say it with me, means every combat phase. So you're just going to be able to, with your Harvester, just keep trying to like take the most expensive non-hero infantry unit they've got, at least one model off them, and you know, on a couple of good dice rolls, this could get pretty crazy, which is fun. The next ability is the Soul Tax, which is cast on a 7. This is a spell, and like I said, the Mortis and Ossifector that you have in this army is a wizard, and that's pretty good because this immediately means, like with Sons of Behemoth that you can see up here, that's an army that struggles to have any wizards in it. This means you can include a wizard in that army and immediately access their ability to use manifestations, which is quite cool. All right. So that gives them the opportunity to have a wizard, you know, and also gives some of these other units the opportunity to have a pretty aggressive, kind of screeny front line, which is kind of cool. Anyway, this is a spell cast on a 7. Your Ossifector picks one of your friendly units that are not in this Regiment of Renown, so one that are in your main army. Then you pick one of your units in the Regiment of Renown, so one of those other units that are wholly within 12 inches. Both of those 2 units need to be picked. So they're both friendly units that you choose. Pick one not in the regiment, and then pick one in the regiment. Then the one not in the regiment, that gets a control score of 1, but the one in the regiment gets +1 to hit and +1 to wound, which does mean that your unit of Mortek Guard are going to have like 21 attacks, 2s and 3s. If we just use the Fantastic Age Index, you can see that their profile is 3s and 4s. So this does mean that they would go to 2s and 3s. They don't have any rend, which is a bit of a negative. These are kind of a unit that's good for holding the line. And obviously that's super supported by the Gothizzar Harvester, because the Harvester's got this ability to generate blood tithe points and use those, bone tithe points, and use those bone tithe points to return models to slain Mortek Guard, specifically in this unit, in this regiment. So that's that ability, and this kind of helps with that. In some ways, makes them more fighty. And lastly, you've got this ability, Rebuild on the March. In your movement phase, pick a Gothizzar Harvest in this Regiment Renown to use this ability if it has 6 bone tithe points. Okay, so we've already got a way of collecting them. The Gothizzar Harvest has got a way of collecting bone tithe points on its War Scroll as well. Every time it kills a model, it can generate 1. But if you do have 6 bone tithe points, reset the Gothizzar Harvester's bone tithe to 0, then set up a replacement unit of the target unit, target unit with half the number of models, rounding up wholly within 9 inches of the Harvester and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. And you pick pick another unit, this Regiment Renown, that has been destroyed to be the target. So those are your targets. So when you do have the Gothizzar Harvester, you can pick the Mortek Guard, and because it doesn't specify that it can't be a non-hero unit, you can choose to bring your wizard back from the dead, which is kind of fun. And you're rounding up from 0 to 1. So then you're going to be able to bring that back, which is kind of cool. So that's fun. So what do I think of this Regiment Renown? it could be a really fun hobby project. I think there are far more exciting ones in this collection of Regiments of Renown. Like, nice way to get a wizard in certain armies, nice way to get like a replenishing kind of screen into some armies as well. Mortek Guard are a little bit, Mortek Guard aren't really taken in OCR Bone Reaper armies, so I think it's less likely to be taken in this. But a fun hobby project, let me know what you think of this. I'm going to give this like on theme, like 6 out of 10, and I'm going to give its rules like a 4 out of 10. Okay, the next Regiment of Renown we're going to talk about are the Exile Scavengers. This is a Caradron Overlord's Regiment of Renown. The story goes, well, the units in it are an Engine Master with dirigible suit, or I think that's how you say it, 3 Sky Wardens and a Gunstock Gun Hauler. And the story goes, his engineering commission revoked the repeated accusations of unsanctioned resource sharing. Gron Yomranson took matters into his own hands by bribing some Sky Wardens and stealing a gun hauler, then fleeing the Skyport authorities before they noticed. He follows armies who can open the way to worthy treasure, swooping down to claim the loot, and the coast is clear. So an additionally piratey pirate who doesn't even believe in the code. Pretty outrageous. So you can take these 3 different units in a bunch of different armies. Beasts of Chaos, which is kind of weird because they're going out of the game soon. Well, in the summer. Bone Splitters, same thing. Cities of Sigmar, that makes sense. Daughters of Cain, Fire Slayers, they're all in the same Grand Alliance. But then Gloomspite Gits, Iron Jaws, Cruel Boys, Lumeth Realm Lords, Ogre Moor Tribes, OCR Bone Reapers, Seraphon, Slaves of Darkness, Sons of Behemoth, and Soul Blight Grave Lords. Okay, let's talk about what you get for these units. You've got 2 special abilities for these 3 units for this Regiment of Renown. Also, I should point out that the points cost for this Regiment of Renown is 460 points, which is quite a lot of points. Absolutely. But it's cheaper than if you were to take them individually, okay? And generally, Sky Wardens and dirigible suits are not taken much anyway, but that's not a problem. Okay, the 2 special abilities you got are an Eye for Loot and Swoop In. The Eye for Loot lets you deploy all of the units in this Regiment of Renown in reserve, so off the board. So when you're doing your deployments, everything goes off the board, okay? The next ability, Swoop In. You pick a Gunshot Gun Hauler in this Regiment of Renown to use this ability if it is studying the battlefield, which means it is in reserve. Set up the Gun Hauler on the battlefield more than 6 inches from all enemy units that have an artifact and more than 9 inches from all other enemy units. So most of the time it's going to be 9 inches away, unless there's an enemy hero with an artifact just stood on their own somewhere in the world. Then set up all other units in this Regiment of Renown wholly within 3 inches of the Gun Hauler and more than 6 inches from all enemy units. So being able to deep strike your Sky Wardens and also your Engine Master within 6 inches of the enemy could be particularly good if you're looking to just like nuke a little small unit or a hero. You got to remember, you're not going to be getting like incredible amounts of output from this. You're going to get some okay output. Then once per turn army in your combat phase, you can use the ability What's Yours is Mine. Pick an enemy unit in combat with a unit in this Regiment Renown to be the target, then pick an artifact power the target has. Artifact power is a special artifact you can take on a hero in your army on your army list. Roll a dice and add 1 to the roll for each unit in this Regiment Renown that's in combat with the target. On a 6+, the target no longer has the artifact power. Now, there aren't tons of good artifacts of power in Age of Sigmar 4. There are some that are very standout, but notably, this isn't going to be like a big meta shifter where what you're going to do is be able to like, on a 4+, because you're going to need all of these units to be in combat, and on a 4+, so only 50% of the time, are you going to be able to make it happen? Most of the time, you maybe only have a couple of models in, so it's either going to be a 6 or a 5. So it's very unlikely, to actually work. And as has been pointed out in the chat by my friend Phil, a much easier way of making someone not be able to use an artifact of power is to kill them, which is fun. But either way, this is super fun thematically. I want to be really clear about that. I love the idea of taking a bunch of pirates and then trying to go and be a pirate and do some pirate shenanigans. Okay, and then the hobby opportunity for this particular regiment is through the roof. I'm giving this a straight 11 out of 10 for theme, right up there. Actual effectiveness in game, let's talk about that actually, if we take a look at some of the units. So the Engine Master moves 12, 8 health, 3 up save, has got an okay shooting profile, okay damage profile, and has got this ability to heal your gun hauler a little bit. Not bad. Not bad. The gunholder themselves can't use 2 of its own abilities, which is being able to transport stuff, because that's a Kharadron Overlord ability, or be an escort vessel, because there's no Kharadron Overlord frigates or ironclads. But you are going to be able to move over models and units, and use your light bomb racks, which is kind of fun. And you do have an okay shooting attack, but not an incredible shooting attack. But it moves 12 inches. And lastly, your 3 Sky Wardens, 2 health each, 4 up save, move 12 inches. You can see a theme. I'm being told that the general loadout people take for KO players is Sky Pikes, so 3 Sky Pikes, and then the Vulcanizer pistol. That's going to give you 10 shots at 10 inches, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. And that's going to give you 7 attacks in close combat, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2 with crit mortals, which is not awful. It's not great. They're kind of like cheaper, not as good prosecutors. But the big key element here is 12, move 12, move 12, move 12. Why is that important? Well, some of these armies, Iron Jaws as a good example, struggle, Fire Slayers maybe, struggle to have these little small units that can go and do battle tactics. Ultimately, Age of Sigmar is a game that you don't win by just killing the enemy, although that's a very effective win path to be able to do that. If your enemy is dead or can't move, normally you're going to be able to win the game. But some armies struggle to go and do battle tactics, especially in the current version of the rules, where many of the battle tactics are go and do stuff somewhere else. And so being able to put units in Deep Strike that can go and then achieve battle tactics feels really nice. And I could see this maybe getting more play than you would expect. So actually, I'm going to give this like a 7 or 8 out of also effectiveness, like 11 for theme, 7 or 8. And obviously in context of these regiments, it's getting a 7 or 8, not in the game. But 7 or 8, because I think you've got some opportunity here to do some cool kit bashing and also have some really fun being a pirate. But also, I think the big impact is that some armies that have struggled to play players' battle tactic armies might start moving to this. Also, some armies don't have access to shooting as well. So some light shooting to clear a screen so that you can charge past the screen, also not a bad shout either. So that's the Exile Scavengers. Our next Regiment Renown is a Flesh-Eater Courts Regiment Renown called the Squires of the Everchosen, which is quite cool. If you're not really sure about Flesh-Eater Courts are under delusions that they are holy knights or knights of realms. For this, the army for this contains a Vargulf courtier and a unit of 3 Morbeg knights. Utgar Harrowhand was once a Varangard, one of the Everchosen's executioners, until he had a run-in with a nest of flesh-eaters. Though he has since transformed into a monstrous Vargulf, flashes of loyalty to his old master occasionally surface, so potent that they seize the ghoulish knights who still serve him. So you can include this Regiment Renown in Blades of Khorne, Disciples of Inch, Magic and Nurgle, Heathen Knights of Slash, or Slaves to Darkness. So in all of the Chaos ones. And this is quite cool because this is previously, up until this point, as far as I'm aware, we've been riffing off the idea that these were good guys turned to madness. But now I love the idea that they're also chaos turned to madness, which is super fun. Yeah, not able to take them in Skaven though, because Skaven isn't dedicated to Archaon. All right, so you got an ability with this selection of units called a Deluded Quest, where once per battle in the deployment phase, you can pick an enemy unit to be the target. The target has the enemy of the Everchosen keyword. What's fun about this is you could even, if you were playing against if you were playing against a player using Archaon, you could make Archaon the enemy of the Everchosen, even though he's the Everchosen. It's pretty fun, right? Because they're like seeing him as something else, which is great. Then, once per battle at the end of any turn, you can do a quest well done, where if an enemy unit of the Everchosen is destroyed by a unit in this Regiment of Renown, you add 10 to the control score of each unit in this regiment for the rest of the battle. So, you probably aren't going to choose Archaon as a target, and instead, you're probably going to choose a small screening unit or maybe one of the more fragile units. So this means your 2 fast units in the Vargulf Courtier and Morbeg Knights are going to count for a lot for controlling objectives, which is kind of cool. But it doesn't really help you kill them any better. So if you were to take these units in a Flesh-Eater Courts army, they'd be 350 points. But in this Regiment Renown, they're 310 points. So you save 40 points. And if we do look at the units, you can see that the Morbeg Knights are fast at 12 inches, and then the Vargulf Courtier is fast at 10 inches. So this does mean if we would make the same argument that you get for the Kharadron Overlords, then you've got a unit of two units, that are going to be able to run around and maybe do battle tactics. Kind of cool, especially for maybe slower armies. Nurgle is one of the armies you can take this in. That's a slower army. What you get, though, is pretty interesting. Morbeg Knights is unit of 3 with 4 health each, 4 up save. They move 12 inches, very fighty. They've got quite a lot of attacks from the mount, 3 attacks each. It's going to be 9 that damage 2. And then 2 attacks each for the riders, which get +1 damage on the charge. Plus they have a champion. So it's going to be 7 attacks doing damage 2, but they are wounded on 4s, which is rough. The Morbeg Knights have got the Predator's Pounce ability, which means they can do retreat and charge and not taking any mortals for it. And then also in the charge phase, if they charge, you pick an enemy within an inch on a 2+, they take D3 mortal damage, which is also okay. They also have a 6-up ward save. So, I don't hate the idea of getting 12 health unit with a 4-up save and a 6-up ward save. But one of the ways that Flesh Eater Courts work is they have a lot of recursion, or they bring a lot of models back. You aren't going to have any of that healing with this army, with this Regiment Renown. So this is just a unit. You got to ask yourself, can you make another unit that's as tanky? In Nurgle, yes. In some of the other armies, no. You're arguing for that. And then the Varghulf Courtier has got 8 health, only a 5-up save with a 6-up ward save. This is a hero and has got a pretty good damage profile with 7 attacks, damage 2, at Ren 2 against infantry, but hits on 4s, and then 1 attack, damage 3. It's got the fly keyword, and at the end of any turn, can heal D6 if any enemy models were slain by a unit this turn. Can heal D6, which will help with its survivability, and can use a retreat ability as if it were your movement phase. Don't forget, you still have to be in combat to be able to use that retreat ability as well. If you were to be able to complete killing the Everchosen's enemy, then this means that the Varghulf Courtier would go up to control value 12 with the ability to, at the end of any turn, pop around the board and maybe change up the control score of objectives. So as well as being able to be mobile and make it so you can score battle tactics, maybe you could also help with objective control as well. Morbeg Knights would go up to control value of, they do have a banner, so they go up to control value of 14, which is kind of interesting. So you could really add a lot of control score to your army. For theme, though, these guys are going to get like a 15 out of 10. It's very cool, riffing on the idea that they're Mad Knights. Now we're getting chaotic Mad Knights. That's fun. For gameplay, I'm going to give them like a 6 or 7 out of 10. I don't think it's terrible. Obviously, a lot of these other armies, like Slaves to Darkness, don't need any help. But Blades of Khorne, Maggotkin, and Nurgle, maybe you could see play in there. That would be quite interesting. And also, you can make some very cool, crazy, demonic cavalry units for your different armies. So theme is really high as well. Our next Regiment Renown is the Sylvaneth Regiment Renown, called the Lost Song Spirits. They're very lost because you won't see them taken. Anyway, 430 points gets you a Tree Lord and 2 units of Spite Revenants. The story here is that natives of the morbid Isle of Decrepita, genuinely they wrote that, the Sylvaneth of the Lost Song Forest have become deafened to the spirit song. They only hear the mournful cries of wayward souls which have driven them to cruelty and madness. Followed by the chilling fog of their homeland, these outcasts follow the dead and half-souled, hoping to vent their own bitterness. And they did not use a model that's literally designed around the bitterness of the Sylvaneth, which is Drycha, and instead just a Tree Lord. Okay. You can take these in Flesh Eater Courts, Idoneth Deepkin, Nighthorn, Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Soulblight Gravelords. All factions which, are kind of like soul tortured, I guess. What do you get? Okay, well, we'll talk about what the units do in a moment. What you get is the Endless Wandering ability, which once per turn for the army, in your enemy hero phase, pick a unit, not all of the units. In this Regiment Renown, this unit can use the normal move ability as if it were your movement phase. So if we take a look at these units, we can see that the Spite Revs move 5 inches and the Tree Lord moves 5 inches as well. So this isn't quite as effective as the movement that we saw from the Flesh Eater Courts Regiment Renown, which can move up to 10 inches and go and help control objectives. And instead, it's just a very pitiful movement you can make in the enemy hero phase. And then you have a passive called Ominous Fog, where units in this Regiment Renown are not visible to enemy units more than 12 inches from them, while they're wholly within 9 inches of the Tree Lord in this Regiment Renown. Now, this is actually pretty effective, especially against things like shooting armies or, armies that want to do a lot of spellcasting at you, because you're not visible and in range while you're near the Tree Lord. But needing to be near the Tree Lord means these 3 units can't operate independently to, go and score battle tactics, as an example, or run around in different places to go hold objectives. Instead, you need to isolate them and make them work together if you're looking to gain that bonus, which is a little bit of a negative. But, you know, the positive is obviously you can't be seen, which genuinely is useful for battle tactics. As units, the Spite Revenants is a unit of 5 models with 2 health each and a 5-up save. So they're not very survivable, but they hit kind of okay. 3 attacks each, 3 hits on 3s, wound on 4s, no rend damage 1, but they do have crit mortals. If there was a way to maybe get a bunch more extra attacks, could be see more play. But 16 attacks, I don't even know if they do have a champion. They do. 16 attacks coming out of this unit with crit mortals means you're going to get 2 mortals, so it's not quite as exciting as it sounds. And then in any combat phase, you have Unbridled Malice, where you pick an enemy infantry unit and combat this unit to be the target. You roll dice on a 3+. The target cannot use commands for the rest of the turn. So it's a stipulation, or a double stippy as we call it. Only targets infantry units only on a 3+. And then the Tree Lord, kind of a great profile, 14 health with a 3-up armor save and control value of 5, is woeful in combat. If we use Age of Index's combat profile, we can see that he's going to do something like 3 damage against a 4-up save, so not necessarily what you'd expect from a Lord, although I live in England, the Lords are pretty weak here too, terrible in a fight. Anyway, in the shooting phase, they do have an ability to use a Strangle Roots ability on a 3-up, making units not able to run or retreat. And that could be pretty cool if you were trying to orientate this into an army looking to do like impact hits or something. That could be quite fun. And then in the combat phase, you're able to pick an enemy unit in combat with the target on a 3-up, subtract 1 from wound rolls for the target. So that's kind of a debuff piece, which is interesting. Maybe you'd like to see this work really well for something like Deepkin, who maybe want to like hold a unit up, or Soulblight Gravelords, or something similar. Personally, for me, this doesn't really hit home. I'm going to put the theme as like a little low, like a 5, I think, because like the theme already exists in Age of Sigmar, Dreicher, and Spite Rev. Spite Revs literally embody this theme anyway, so it's just more of the same. The story, like the rules as to the story, doesn't work for me either, and I don't think the rules are particularly good, so I'm going to give the rules like a 2, to be honest. Like the Tree Lord's a bad unit, and also when you play Sylvaneth, units are able to be, if you take a Lariel, you can return them from the dead up to half strength or half wounds. You also can't do that here. So they're pointed and also kind of built as rules to probably work with a Lariel and their ability to come back from the dead. And they also don't even have this in this regiment. So it's not a big hit for me. Our next regiment renown is Nurgles Gift. This is 2 units of 3 Nurglings. Now, everyone slow down, because I know you're very excited about this. And it is actually very cool. So these 2 units of 3 Nurglings normally will run you 200 points in a Nurgle army, 180 points as a Regiment of Renown. And you can take them in Beasts of Chaos, Bone Splitters, Cities of Sigmar, Daughters of Cain, Flesh Eater Corpse, Fire Slayers, Gloomspite Gits, Iron Jaws, Carriage and Overlords, Cruel Boys, Lumineth Realm Lords, Ogre Tribes, Skaven, Slaves of the Sons of Behemoth, and Sylvaneth. A ton of different armies. Right, let's talk about the story first before we get into anything else. Nurgle is a generous god, granting gifts even to those who deny their genius. It takes only 1 infected, well-watering hole or imported keg for corruption to bite. At first, the warrior feels a little mild discomfort, but as the day of battle draws near, their suffering deepens and eager giggling echoes through the aether. Okay, let's talk about the abilities. The first ability is used in the deployment phase. It's called the incubation period. The ability must be used to deploy this Regiment of Renown. Set up the units in this Regiment of Renown in reserve, festering within, so off the board, and they have now been deployed. And then the passive is bursting with life. If a friendly this is the next ability. If a friendly non-Nurgles Gift unit would be destroyed, before the last model is removed from play, you roll a dice and add 1 to the roll for each other friendly non-Nurgles Gift unit that has been destroyed in this battle. On a 5+, you pick a friendly unit that is festering within and set up wholly within 6 inches of that model, and it can be set up into combat. So this is actually very effective, even if it's a little bit random. What's going to happen with this unit of Nurglings is, and as the game progresses, it's more likely that you're going to be able to pop this unit out. Within 6 inches of the unit means you're going to be able to maybe lock the enemy into combat where they're not expecting it, denying them things like that +1 damage on the charge, maybe locking up shooting units when they weren't really expecting it, which is fun. There's even the opportunity here to be able to charge units in, make it so that they die, and then be able to still lock them in combat with the Nurglings. Means in their next movement phase, they'll have to retreat instead of being able to move and charge, which is how you're able to get lots of movement. This doesn't make a ton of sense when I'm using words to describe it, but if you can just picture how this, if you just get some models out on the table and try to make this happen, this is going to be really interesting, because when your units die, you're going to be able to control the board state. And we've seen this be super effective in armies in the past. Used to be something, or still something Tzeentch can do, but definitely something that was used a lot in 3rd edition with Tzeentch for blocking units up. And as has been pointed out in the chat, 6 inches is actually pretty massive. Like around the board, because it basically gives you a 12-inch area from when the last model died. And seeing as you decide, if you were to do X number of damage to me, I can decide where the last model dies in a line of models, right? So very, very effective. Nurglings themselves are a unit of 3 models with 4 health each, a 6-up save, but importantly, a 5-up ward save. So for 180 points, you're going to get 24 health on a 5-up ward save. It's not easy to get rid of. And in addition, at the end of any turn, you can heal 3 to this unit, as well as obviously being able to do things like rally. So there's the potential to make it so that these guys just stick around and just be really annoying. Very, very annoying. And then they've got a ton of attacks. Interestingly, they've basically got the same amount of attacks as we saw from the Spite Revenants. They're not necessarily considered to be like a combat powerhouse like Spite Revenants are, even though they aren't, but they have as many attacks basically, but they're much, much more survivable. This is a Regiment of Renown where the theme is through the roof. We're going to give this a straight 10 out of 10. And probably out of this entire roster of Regiments of Renown, this is probably rules-wise getting a 10 out of 10. And I know you're going to say to yourself, Rob, this seems like just a couple of funny units. And this is very funny. But also it's going to be super effective for certain armies, especially if you're running things like MSU, like multiple small units, or if you're throwing units away at the enemy that you want to block them up. It's pretty effective, to be honest, especially if you're running armies that can also return models back or units back, like Flesh Eater Courts is a good example, because they're not going to get bonus units, but you're going to lose units and then also bring units back. Sylvaneth is another good example. They kill a Durthu, you pop out a unit of Nurglings and you bring the Durthu back. It's actually pretty nice for being able to block your opponent up. So this just gets a straight 10 out of 10. And the little guys are the best guys. Our next Regiment of Renown is the Stumblefoot Gargant. This is one Man Crusher Gargant. Okay. The story for the Man Crusher Gargant is the rise of the Mega Gargants has focused many of their smaller mates, but there are always some who loot great kegs of ale and get a bit carried away. Staggering across the land in a drunken stupor, these Gargants turn up on the side of the battlefield. Canny commanders simply move their troops out of the way. You can take this in a ton of different armies. And don't forget, with the Mega Gargants Regiments of Renown, you're also able to take Mega Gargants in armies as well, although you can't have 2 Regiments of Renown in the same army list. So that's something to remember. So it's just a solo Mega Gargant. And if we just take a look at him, it's 12 health, 5-up save, control value 10. I did just point out here, I brought up the stats for the output. This output is atrocious. I think that's important to remember. I think he's got the same amount of output as like a foot hero. Like, it's just garbage, to be honest, and his output. And then he's got 2 passives. He's got run and charge, and he's got the ability to stuff a unit in his bag, but not anywhere near as good as the OCR Bone Reaper ability. Okay, he's also got a couple of abilities where you can pick a point and do some mortal damage. You can, on a 3+, subtract 1 from hit rolls for units in combat, and you can move 2d6 in the charge phase. But importantly, you can't do you can only do one of these abilities in a turn. You can't do both of these abilities in a turn. This is garbage. Like, the theme is cool. I like the idea that there's Gargants out there getting drunk, being Gargants. So I'm just going to call this, like, I don't know, like a 5. Like, this is fine. That's what Gargants do. And I do love that. From Man Crusher Gargant, but rules 0 out of 10. Our next Regiment of Renown is Snerks Trogg for Hire. Okay, this is 1 Loon Boss and a Dankhold Troggoth. Very cool. Very cool. A little guy and a big guy. A bit of a Master Blaster situation you can include in a ton of different armies. Piece of Chaos, Blades of Khorne. Bone Splitters, Cities of Sigmar, Daughters of Cain, Disciples Inch, Hedonites Slash, Deepkin, Iron Jaws, Cruel Boys, LRL, Maggotkin, Ogreborn Tribes, OCR Bone Reaper, Seraphon, Skaven, Safe Slant, Soulbreak Rebels, Stormcast Eternals. Stormcast Eternals with a Trogg. What's fun is you definitely could hobby up something that would be very cool. Use, for Stormcast Eternals as an example, you could potentially use one of your little memoriams that you've never painted because, you know, they're just tokens you're never going to use. And then you could paint up some like big ass model to be the Trogg. That would be fun. You could do something very cool with that. The story for Snerks Trogg for Hire is, having learned the great secret of mercenary work from the local mega gargant, Snerk Mooneater, the loon boss, decided to give it a go. Finding little success, the boss grot took the next best option, periodically waking a surly Troggoth and acting as the go-between for the beast. Snerk, of course, holds onto the Troggoth's half of the pay for safekeeping. So this is kind of a Games Workshop in their employees situation. Okay, so what do you get with this Regiment Renown? First up, you get in your charge phase, you got Go That Way. Pick the Dankhold Troggoth in this Regiment Renown to be the target if it's wholly within 12 inches of the loon boss. For the rest of the turn, the target can still use charge abilities, even if it used a retreat ability this turn. I think maybe they thought they meant run, but they didn't. So they just meant retreat. So not retreat and just retreat and charge, not run and charge, but retreat and charge is kind of okay. And then you've got to be wholly within 12 inches of the loon boss. And then finally, you've got the passive tactical cowering. While the loon boss in this Regiment of Renown is within the combat range of the Troggoth, the loon boss has a 4 ward save, pretty survivable. However, each time you make a successful ward roll for the loon boss, allocate 1 damage point to the Dankhold Troggoth after the damage sequence of the loon boss has been resolved. Ward rolls can be made. So you can basically pass off damage from the loon boss onto the Troggoth. I don't know why you would do that, though, because the Troggoth is the only good unit in this book. In this kind of like Regiment Renown. Okay, if we go and look at the actual units, you can see the Troggoth is pretty cool. He's got 10 health, 4 up save, and then move 6 inches, which is not that fast. But it's got 4 attacks, Ren 2 damage, D3 plus 3. Let's go. Right? An actual unit that does some smashing. At the start of any turn, which does mean every turn, then you heal D3 to this unit. So, a little bit survivable. And if you did want to pass off some wounds onto the loon boss, yeah, that's cool. You can heal D3. Also, he's got 4 up spell ignore, thanks to magical resistance, and has got the ability Wade and Smash, which you could be doing in the combat phase, where if this unit is in combat, it can move 6 inches, must end that move in combat, roll D3 for each enemy unit within an inch on a 2+, inflicting an amount of mortal damage. That's pretty good. That's a lot of potential output. And then the loon boss, so listen, a Dankhold Troggoth is great. Being able to take a unit that can do a ton of damage, very cool. Obviously, kind of better when you use Trogg or a Trogg boss, because you can give them extra attacks or extra rend. But you got the Loon Boss. Loon Boss has got 5 health, 4 up save, 6 up ward, can have that 4 up ward save, is got 5 attacks at damage D3, which is genuinely better than like the Man Crusher, as an example. But it's got 2 abilities, neither of which affect you can't use. The first one affects Moonclan Stabbers. There's none in this regiment. And the second one even, I apologize, lets you use a fight ability for this. So when you use a fight ability for this unit, you can choose a non-hero Moonclan infantry unit that can fight at the same time as this unit. Unfortunately, the Dankhold Troggoth doesn't have the Moonclan keyword. So I think the rules writer didn't know that they don't work together. Which is kind of odd. Right, okay. Theme, very cool. A fun little story. You get onto the tabletop, you make these guys argue with each other. Like this guy's like, come on, get over here. So theme pretty high, like a 7 or an 8. But rules-wise, pretty garbage. I'm going to give it like a 2 because you just don't want this, I think, unfortunately. But theme is really high, which is fun. You don't even necessarily have like a cool thing you can do, like the pirate one. The last regiment renown is the Goroan scions. Scions? Goroan? Anyway, this contains an Ogroid Mimrodon, sick model, so sick. A Ogroid Thaumaturge from the Tzeentch range, also sick. And then 3 Ogroid Therodons. Perfect. Okay, absolutely perfect. So it's a great little combo of stuff. All the not Beasts of Chaos models that they didn't release. Okay, you can include them in a Bone Splitter's army, a Gloomspite Gitz army, an Iron Jaws army, a Cruel Boys army, an Ogre Tribes army, and a Sons of Behemoth army. The Sons of Behemoth army is already very interesting because the Ogroid Thaumaturge is a wizard. So that's pretty cool. Okay, and let's talk about the units actually first before we do anything else. So again, going to Age of Index, we will look at the Ogroid Thaumaturge first. So he's got 8 health, a 5-up save, a 6-up ward, control value 2, but importantly is a wizard level 1, which means if you wanted to bring in a wizard into your army that's also going to be able to cast manifestations and stuff, that's super cool. Big thumbs up for that. Got a shooting attack that does D3 damage. It's got a combat attack that's got 3 attacks, damage 3 on the charge, but it's only 3 attacks. And then the staff has got 2 attacks that hits on a 4, wounds on 3, no rend damage D3. He does have a passive called the Thaumaturge Rage, where you add on to hit rolls and wound rolls to its combat attacks while it's damaged. So if it's even taken just 1 damage point, then this does mean that all of these are going to be hitting on 3s and then wounding on 2s, but there's not a lot of attacks. And then once per turn, at the end of any turn, pick an enemy unit that had any damage points allocated to this turn by this unit's combat attacks. They have the burning keyword. Now that relates to the Tzeentch special army rule, but they did remember that, and then they've included that in the Regiment Renown rules, which we'll look at in a moment. Okay. So you can see he's got a ward save as a wizard. So a way of getting a wizard in, cool. Doesn't necessarily interact with the Therodons or the Myrmidon, but you got a wizard in there and you got the burning keyword. All right, let's go back and look at the Therodons, or the Myrmidon and the Therodons. So the Ogroid Myrmidon, not bad as a combat character. Love him to have a 5-up ward save. Like him to have a few more attacks. But anyway, he's got 8 health, 4-up save. He's got a Gladiator Spear, which is only 1 shot at 10 inches that does D3. But he's got 6 attacks in close combat, which are damage 3, hitting on 3s, wound on 2s, rend 1 unless it's against a monster, in which case it's rend 2. And has got the Myrmidon Rage, where while this unit is damaged, you add 2 to the attacks characteristic of its melee weapon. So it's going to have 8 attacks, 3s and 2s, rend 1, damage 3. Like, that is pretty legit. I just would like to see his survivability lifted up a little bit, that's all. But the reason you take him, definitely the reason you could maybe take him in a Slaves to Darkness army, but maybe you will be taking him in this regiment, is the reaction to you declaring a fight ability with this unit. Pick a friendly Ogroid Therodon unit that has not used a fight ability this turn and is within this unit's combat range to beat the target. The target can be picked to use the fight ability immediately after the fight ability has been used, and if it's picked to do so, you add 1 to hit rolls to the target's attacks for the rest of the turn. What this means is a unit of Therodons is going to strike simultaneously after this unit with +1 to hit, and that's really good. It would be awesome if you could have a unit of 6 Therodons in this army, because obviously then that would scale better, but you've got a unit of 3 Therodons in this regiment, sorry, not army. And then the Therodons is 3 models each. They've got 5 health apiece, that's 15 health, 4-up save, control value 2. They've got 4 attacks each. They hit on 4s, they wound on 2s, they're rend 1, they're damage 2. They've got anti-infantry rend 1. But they do have once per battle in any combat phase, you can add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit's melee weapons, which means you can have 13 attacks from this unit, damage 3, potentially hitting on 3s. 13 attacks, damage 3. That's pretty cool. It could do some good work. It'd be much better if you could have a unit 6, but it is what it is. And then the actual regiment special rules, you've got the Goroan Forgecraft, which in your hero phase, once per turn, pick a friendly destruction hero that's wholly within the combat range of a hero in this regiment of renown to be the target. Wholly within means wholly within 3 inches of the unit. So this means that most of your large monsters, like Sons of Behemoth, Mega Gargant, Kragnos, aren't going to be able to fit wholly within 3 inches. So this is going to be more likely to be a small foot troop who's going to get the bonus. It's going to be really hard to get the larger models, which you do want to give the buff to, wholly within 3 inches. And then the effect is on a 3+, you add 1 to the rend characteristic of the target's melee weapons until the start of the next turn. So a little stipulation and then a 3+ to make it work. So not really the reason you want to take it. But a cool reason to take this Regiment Renown, which I really like, is because of the spell Bellow of Gorka Morka that's cast on a 7. You pick the Ogroid Thaumaturge in this Regiment Renown to cast a spell, then pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches. It would be cooler if it was 18, but 12 is fine. The target has strike last until the start of your next turn. In addition, while the target has the burning keyword, subtract 1 from hit rolls to the target until you start next turn. So minus 1 to hit, you're not bothered about. Strike last, though, you definitely want to have. And being able to get strike last in your army or add strike last to your army that can already make strike last happen, you can double up on enemy units having strike last. Obviously, because it's a spell, you can use counter spell to cast it in your opponent's turn as well, which is pretty spicy. And then it lasts until the start of your next turn. So there's an opportunity to get a lot of strike last in the enemy, and then you've got a couple of melee units that can do some okay fighting. I don't hate that. It's pretty expensive. To take this. This is going to set you back 470 points, but you get a wizard, you get a couple of fighting units, you get a lot of units. They're not super fast, but they're not bad either. So that is it. And that is all of the Regiments Renown. Sorry, last ones, I'm going to give them like a 7 for rules, maybe an 8 for rules, and I'm going to give them, I reckon I'll give them like an 8 or 9 for theme, maybe an 8 for theme, which is cool. In fact, I don't even think I've read the story. The story is, the beast known as the Ogroids were once the Gorians, the race of destruction that fell to chaos after Uruk sacked their capital. But not every Gorian clan spat upon Gorka Morka. Some stayed faithful, and they occasionally emerged to fight alongside their old kin. Their gift of flashy choppers is usually enough to banish any suspicion. That's pretty cool. And we get to see a little bit of the story. So those are the Regiments Renown. Let me know which is your favorite. I think Nurglings are the ones we're going to see in competitive play. I could see the Pirates one being very fun. The Nurglings one is also very fun as well. I really love the Morbeg Knights one because you could just kit bash some Morbeg Knights and do something super cool and fun there. So there's some real opportunity to do some fun stuff with lots of these regiments. And I've got a lot of thoughts to make about Regiments Renown, which I'll make in a separate video. But yeah, I've loved that these have landed. I like that this is going to get the community excited and buzzing. That's great. I like that the theme is really high and there's lots of really interesting things that we could do. So hopefully we'll see more of these in the future, and hopefully we'll see more that make it into armies and people get to collect some cool stuff. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks very much. See you soon and goodbye.